I was never meant to hear it. Dad had forgotten to hang up, and his voice suddenly filled my room, cold, steady, and chilling. "That old man won't make it through the day after our Thanksgiving surprise," he said. Then came Mom's laughter, sharp and cruel. "The mansion will be ours by Christmas." My stomach dropped. They were talking about Grandpa Henry, my billionaire grandfather. For a split second, I thought it was some twisted joke. But then Dad's tone turned darker. "Make sure the wine's ready." That was when I knew it wasn't a joke. It was a plan. My hands were shaking as I ended the call and immediately dialed another number. "Grandpa, it's me. Please, don't come to dinner," I begged. He paused for a moment before answering in that calm, knowing voice of his. "Don't worry, sweetheart. I'll be there. And I won't be alone." 5 days later, when Grandpa Henry stepped into our dining room, my parents froze. The color drained from their faces. From the outside, we looked flawless. The Carters, a picture-perfect family, wealthy, polished, untouchable. Dad managed one of Grandpa's real estate divisions. Mom hosted charity galas and smiled for magazine covers. And me? I was the quiet one, the daughter who believed we were blessed. After Grandma passed last year, Grandpa had grown quieter, more distant. Dad always said, "He's old, Emily, he needs us. Let's make this year special for him." So when Dad suggested inviting Grandpa to Thanksgiving, I thought it was sweet. Now I know it was bait. In the week leading up to the holiday, our mansion in Portland turned into a stage set. Mom barked at the housekeeper, "No dust, no streaks." Henry Carter notices everything. Dad obsessed over the wine list. "He loves Cabernet, aged perfectly," he muttered. Every detail had to be immaculate. Every smile rehearsed. It was all an illusion of love, concealing the decay underneath. I watched them practice affection like it was a performance. Mom even stood in front of the mirror, rehearsing her soft, polite laugh. Dad repeated his lines until they sounded effortless. "Henry, you've lost weight. You look 20 years younger." The sight made my stomach twist. One night, while they argued over seating arrangements, I asked, "Dad, why are you so nervous?" "He's just family," he smiled too quickly. "Because family deserves our best." But later, passing by his office, I glimpsed his computer screen. A document titled Property Title Transfer Draft glowed on the monitor. My chest tightened. I tried convincing myself it meant nothing, maybe business, maybe old paperwork. But every whisper, every time Mom mentioned new beginnings, I felt the floor beneath me start to crack. By Tuesday night, Mom turned to me with a chilling smile. "When Grandpa arrives, you'll pour the first glass of wine. You're his favorite. He'll never suspect a thing." I forced a smile, pretending not to understand. Inside, I was screaming. That night, lying awake, I realized I couldn't pretend anymore. I had already warned Grandpa once, but now I needed to trust that he meant what he said, that he'd be prepared. Still, a part of me clung to hope, that maybe my parents weren't as monstrous as I feared. For nearly an hour, I stared at my phone, hands trembling, before finding the courage to call again. When Grandpa answered, his tone was calm, too calm. "Emily, sweetheart, it's late." "What's wrong?" My throat tightened. "Please don't come to Thanksgiving dinner." There was silence, long and heavy. "Why not?" he asked quietly. I took a shaky breath and whispered the words that had haunted me for days. "Dad and Mom, they're planning something. Something terrible." "I overheard them," he didn't interrupt. He didn't even sound surprised. "Tell me exactly what you heard," he said, so I told him every single word. "That old man won't last a day after our Thanksgiving surprise. The mansion will be ours." When I finished, my heart was pounding so hard I could barely breathe. He was silent for a few moments before saying softly, "You did the right thing, Emily. I'm proud of you." "You believe me?" I whispered. "Of course. I've seen how they look at me lately. Greed always finds a way to show itself." That broke me. Tears blurred my vision. Part fear, part relief. "Please, Grandpa. Go somewhere safe. Don't come here." "No," he said firmly. "If I run, they win. I'll be there, but not alone." "Not alone? What do you mean?" "Don't worry about it," he replied gently. "Just act normal. Let them think you know nothing." Before I could ask anything else, he hung up. The next morning, Mom's false sweetness made my stomach turn. "Your grandfather confirmed he's coming." "Isn't that wonderful?" Her smile was polished sugar hiding poison. Dad kissed her cheek and murmured, "Good. Everything's going according to plan." They didn't see me standing at the doorway, frozen in place. That night, I lay awake as rain tapped relentlessly against my window. Every clap of thunder felt like a countdown. Grandpa's words kept echoing in my mind. "I'll come, but not alone. Who would he bring? A friend, a lawyer, security? And would it be enough?" Something in Dad's voice told me that whatever plan they had wasn't just poison in a glass. It was years of buried resentment about to erupt, and in 5 days it would detonate right in our dining room. Thanksgiving morning arrived, yet the house felt heavy, almost toxic. Mom hummed a cheerful tune in the kitchen, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Emily, set the dining table, dear. Everything must be flawless when your grandfather arrives," she said. Her voice was bright, almost theatrical, like a spotlight shining on a crime in progress. Dad paced near the fireplace, glancing at his watch repeatedly. "He's never late," he muttered. "Henry's too proud to keep anyone waiting." Every word carried a sharp edge. Was it fear? I couldn't tell anymore. The caterers arrived at noon. The aroma of roasted turkey, cinnamon, and butter usually meant warmth, family, and comfort. Today, it made my stomach twist. Mom moved through the kitchen like an actress rehearsing her final scene. She aligned wine glasses with millimeter precision, muttering, "Candles lit just before he arrives." "And Emily, remember to smile." I wanted to scream, "Smile? While they plan to kill him?" By 4:30, I slipped into my room and texted Grandpa, "Are you still coming? Please tell me you're safe." No reply. Minutes crawled into an hour. Outside, the sun dipped low, casting long orange streaks across the mansion's marble floors. Dad stood at the window. "Rigid. He's late," he muttered. "Jaw tight. He's making us wait," Mom replied, her tone icy. He always liked to control every detail. Then at exactly 6, headlights appeared through the front gate. Mom adjusted her pearl necklace. "Showtime," she whispered. The doorbell rang. Dad opened it and froze. Grandpa Henry stood there, tall and imposing in a dark overcoat. Silver hair glinted beneath the porch light. He wasn't alone. 2 people followed him, a woman in a navy suit and a man with a discreet earpiece. "Richard, Elaine," Grandpa said smoothly. "This is Miss Holloway, my estate attorney, and Mr. Rhodes, my head of security." Mom blinked. "Security for Thanksgiving dinner?" "Oh, just a precaution," Grandpa said, the smile on his face failing to reach his eyes. "One can never be too careful with family these days." The words cut through the room. Dad forced a laugh. "You're joking, right?" "I rarely joke about my will," Grandpa replied. He stepped inside, surveying the room, the table, the glasses, even the wine waiting by the decanter. Then his gaze met mine. A subtle nod. Tiny, almost imperceptible, but enough to steady my heart for the first time in days. Dinner was about to begin. But this wasn't a family gathering anymore. It was a battlefield, disguised with linen napkins and candlelight. We sat at the table like actors trapped in a play we couldn't escape. Golden light from the chandelier shimmered against crystal glasses, making everything look perfect. Too perfect. Even the air felt rehearsed. Grandpa took his place at the head of the table, calm, almost regal. Mom and Dad forced polite smiles across from him. I sat between them, the only one who knew the truth on both sides. "So," Grandpa began, carving the turkey with slow, deliberate precision. "Richard, I hear the Portland office is still struggling. Is that correct?" Dad stiffened, fork paused mid-air. "We're handling it." "These things take time." "Ah," Grandpa murmured. 30 years of my work and still no progress. Curious." The silence that followed was deafening. Even the ticking of the clock seemed loud. Mom cleared her throat. "Henry, maybe we should just enjoy dinner." "No business talk tonight, of course," Grandpa said, a faint smile touching his lips. "You're right, Elaine." "Let's talk about family instead," Grandpa said, his tone smooth but cutting. Then his eyes found mine. "Emily, sweetheart, why don't you pour the wine? You've grown so much, I'd like to see how steady your hands are." My pulse stuttered. I reached for the bottle, trying to keep my hands from trembling. The deep red wine glided smoothly into each glass. When I reached Grandpa's place, he lifted a hand. "Allow me," he murmured. He took the bottle, filled his own glass, and with an almost careless motion, exchanged it with Dad's. It was so subtle that no one else seemed to catch it, except me. and Miss Holloway, his attorney, whose sharp eyes flicked up briefly, acknowledging the move without a word. We ate in uneasy silence for several minutes. Then Grandpa set his fork down, his voice calm but deliberate. "You know, Richard," he began, "when your mother was alive, she used to remind us that Thanksgiving was meant for gratitude, for valuing what we already have, not coveting what belongs to someone else." Dad's smile faltered. "We're grateful for everything you've done for us," he said stiffly. "Aren't we, Elaine?" "Of course," Mom replied too quickly, her voice pitched higher than usual. "Good," Grandpa said, leaning back slightly. "Because lately, I've been thinking about legacy, about who truly deserves to carry it forward." His gaze locked on me. "Emily has something many people forget how to value: honesty. She doesn't lie. She doesn't steal." The air in the room seemed to fracture. Dad's hand tightened around his knife. "What exactly are you suggesting?" he asked, his voice low and dangerous. Grandpa remained composed. "I'm not suggesting anything, Richard. I'm reminding you that greed always comes with a cost." Then he raised his glass. "To family," he said evenly. Dad hesitated, then lifted his own, the one that had been switched, and drank deeply. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the color drained from his face. What did you do?" he choked. Grandpa's smile was faint, almost kind. "Nothing lethal. Just a small sample of what betrayal tastes like when it's poisoned." Dad's hand trembled as he gripped the edge of the table, his skin turning ashen. "What did you put in my drink?" "Calm yourself," Grandpa said softly, though his voice carried steel. "It's not poison, merely a light sedative. You'll recover soon enough. I just wanted you to understand how it feels, to be utterly powerless." Mom shot up from her chair, eyes wide. "Henry, how dare you? This is madness!" "Is it madness?" Grandpa asked, his gaze slicing through her composure. "Or justice?" "You can't prove anything," she stammered. "Oh, but I can," he replied coolly, nodding toward the far end of the table. "Mr. Rhodes." The man in the black suit tapped on his tablet, and a video flickered to life on the large dining room screen behind us. The audio filled the space with haunting familiarity. Dad's voice echoed first. "That old man won't last a day after our Thanksgiving surprise. Then Mom's. The mansion will be ours." Their laughter followed, chilling, unmistakable. Mom's face went pale. Dad sat frozen, lips trembling. Where did you get that?" he rasped. "Your phones," Grandpa said, his voice measured. "I didn't tap them. You simply forgot to hang up. Emily heard everything. She called me immediately after. Both their heads snapped toward me. You told him?" Mom hissed. "I saved his life," I shot back, my voice shaking. "Someone had to." Dad slammed his fist against the table. "You foolish girl. You've destroyed everything." "No," Grandpa said, rising from his seat, his presence commanding. "You destroyed yourselves." Miss Holloway opened a leather portfolio and began spreading documents across the table. Her tone was crisp, unwavering. "As of this morning, Mr. Henry Carter has transferred full ownership of the Carter estate and all associated properties into a charitable foundation, the Carter Trust, under the management of Emily Carter." Mom gasped. You gave it to her?" "Not gave," Grandpa corrected. "Entrusted. I built this family on integrity, not greed." Dad's breathing turned ragged. "You can't just erase us from your life. We're your family." "Blood without honor is meaningless," Grandpa thundered. "You plotted to kill me for money, Richard, your own father." Dad's chair screeched backward as he stood, his face contorted. "You drove me to this. You controlled everything, my career, your business, even my future, and now you've thrown it all away." Grandpa's voice rose, resonant with fury. "You think this mansion makes you powerful? You think stealing it would make you more than the frightened, bitter man you've become?" Mom covered her ears, trembling. "Stop it, both of you." But Grandpa didn't stop. "You wanted my empire? Fine, take it. But you'll live knowing what you've done. Every recording, every document, every witness, it's all ready for the authorities." Tears blurred my eyes. I had never seen him like that. Strong, furious, and heartbreakingly human. Fierce, unyielding. Just, "Grandpa, please," I whispered, my voice barely audible. He turned to me, and for a brief moment his features softened. "Don't cry, Emily. This isn't about revenge. It's about truth." Then his gaze shifted back to my parents. "You intended to end my life for this mansion," he said steadily. "Tonight your claim ends. You no longer have anything here, not the property, not my trust, not my respect." Dad's voice cracked, desperation bleeding through. "Henry, please." "We can fix this." "You already have," Grandpa said calmly, stepping back. "By revealing who you truly are." Silence fell. Only the faint whisper of candles burning low filled the room. Mr. Rhodes moved forward quietly. "Shall I escort them out, Mr. Carter?" "Yes," Grandpa replied. "They no longer belong in this house." Mom collapsed into a heap of tears as the guards guided her to the door. Dad followed, defeated, casting one final glance toward me. I met his eyes, and for the first time, fear had been replaced by relief. The front door closed behind them with a hollow, echoing click. Grandpa sank into his chair, exhausted but composed. "Justice," he murmured, staring into his untouched wine. "That's the truest Thanksgiving gift." I reached across the table, taking his hand in mine. "You didn't just save your life tonight, Grandpa. You saved mine too," I whispered. The dining room remained silent after the door shut. Only the soft tinkle of the chandelier swaying above broke the stillness. My own parents, my blood, had been escorted out like criminals. For a long moment, no one spoke. Grandpa's fingers hovered lightly over the tablecloth where their glasses had been. Then he exhaled slowly. I never imagined I'd have to do that. Not to my own son. I swallowed hard, voice shaking. "You did what you had to do." "No," he said, shaking his head slowly. "I did what he forced me to do." Outside, muffled shouting carried to the mansion. I moved to the window. In the driveway, Dad and Mom were arguing, their faces twisted with rage and humiliation. Their voices bounced off the stone walls. "You promised this would work." Mom yelled. "You were the one who wanted this." Dad snapped back. "It was your idea to poison him." "You agreed, don't blame me." They tore each other apart, the perfect image of a family unraveling under the weight of their own greed. I pressed my hand to my mouth, heart aching and burning at once. "They're destroying themselves," I whispered. Grandpa joined me at the window, his reflection beside mine in the glass. "Evil never stays united, Emily," he said softly. "It always turns on itself." A flash of red and blue pierced the darkness. 2 police cars rolled up the driveway. "I called them earlier," Grandpa said calmly. "Before dinner, just in case." Within minutes, the officers were at the door. One tall, steady man stepped inside. "Mr. Carter, we received your report." "Are these the individuals you mentioned?" Grandpa nodded toward the driveway. "Yes, that's my son and his wife. They tried to harm me. Evidence is inside." The officers went outside, and I watched Mom's expression shift from anger to sheer terror as they rifled through her purse and discovered the small vial. The same powder she had planned to slip into Grandpa's wine. Ela Carter. "Richard Carter," one officer said, voice firm. "You are under arrest for attempted assault and conspiracy to commit harm," Mom screamed, piercing the cold evening air as they cuffed her. Dad offered no resistance, standing hollow-eyed and whispering, "Emily, please, tell them." I shook my head slowly, tears streaming down my cheeks. "I can't save you from yourselves." As they were led away, her voice carried on the wind back to me. "You ruined this family, Emily." "No," I thought. "You did." Once the police cars disappeared down the long driveway, a silence heavier than sound settled over the mansion. Grandpa placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. "You were brave," he said. "Braver than I could have asked for." "It doesn't feel like bravery," I whispered. "It often doesn't," he replied. "Sometimes it feels like losing everything. But you have to let go of what's rotten to protect what's worth keeping." One by one, the candles flickered out. In the dimming light, I realized Thanksgiving had transformed, not about gratitude anymore, but about survival. The next morning, sunlight crept cautiously into the mansion. Everything was still, the chairs, the plates, the untouched turkey. A frozen reminder of the chaos from the night before. I descended the staircase to find Grandpa by the fireplace, reading glasses perched on his nose, flipping carefully through documents. His face was composed, yet I noticed a subtle tremor in his hands. "Did you manage to sleep at all?" I asked softly. He lifted his eyes and gave me a faint smile. I closed mine, though my mind refused to rest. "Not really," he admitted quietly. The silence between us was far from empty. It carried all the words we didn't need to speak. By noon, the phone started ringing incessantly. Neighbors, journalists, even board members from Grandpa's company called. Headlines screamed, "Billionaire Henry Carter survives alleged family poisoning attempt." I turned the TV off. He didn't need to see that. Later that afternoon, a detective arrived with an update. "Mr. Carter, both suspects have been formally charged," he said. "There's sufficient evidence for attempted homicide and conspiracy." The video and the powder samples made it indisputable. Grandpa nodded solemnly, the weight of justice and heartbreak written across his face. "And the daughter?" the detective asked gently. Grandpa's gaze softened as he looked at me. "She's not a suspect," he said. "She's the reason I'm still alive." Once the detective left, I finally allowed myself to break down. "I don't know what to feel," I whispered. "They're my parents, but they tried to kill you." He closed the folder in his lap with a soft sigh. "Sometimes the truth is harsh, Emily, but it's still the truth. And even when it hurts, it frees us." Days passed. Reporters lingered outside our gates, hungry for scandal. But Grandpa refused every interview. "Justice doesn't require an audience," he told me. "It only requires peace." Meanwhile, Mom and Dad's lawyers reached out, negotiating pleas. Prosecutors offered a deal, lesser charges in exchange for a full confession. Grandpa agreed, not from pity, he said, but to end the ordeal without feeding hatred. It was a clarity of spirit I could hardly describe. When the verdict arrived 2 weeks later, it felt surreal. 3 years probation, 200 hours of community service at a senior care facility, and a 5-year ban from contacting Grandpa or me. Tabloids called it lenient, but I understood. It wasn't mercy. It was consequence, quiet, deliberate, and absolute. That evening, Grandpa poured us both tea instead of wine. "To truth," he said, lifting his cup. "And to peace," I added. As the fire crackled, I realized something essential. Justice doesn't have to roar. It doesn't always punish loudly. Sometimes it quietly restores balance and allows you to breathe again. A month later, the mansion felt different, lighter, calmer, as if it had exhaled after holding its breath for decades. Winter had settled over Portland, frosting the gardens and freezing fountains mid-splash. Inside, Grandpa and I decorated the Christmas tree, something Grandma had once loved doing. "Silver or gold?" I asked, holding 2 ribbons. "Silver," he said softly. "Gold belongs to the past." He placed the last ornament, a small photo of Grandma in her wedding dress, on a branch. We stepped back, letting the lights twinkle across the room. For once, silence felt peaceful, not painful. Grandpa handed me a small velvet box. "What's this?" I asked. "Open it," he said. Inside lay a single antique key attached to a brass tag engraved, "The Carter Foundation." "It's yours now," he whispered. "The trust we established, the mansion, the scholarships, everything. I want you to oversee it." "Me?" I gasped. "But I'm not ready." "You are," he said, eyes steady but warm. "You witnessed evil and chose good. You upheld the truth even when it cost everything. That is what true leadership means." Tears blurred my vision. I threw my arms around him, feeling safe, loved, and whole once more. Outside, snow began to fall, blanketing the world in white. For the first time in months, I didn't feel haunted by the past. I felt gratitude, not for what I lost, but for what endured. Family, I realized, isn't just blood. It's those who remain beside you when everything else falls apart. That night, as the fire dwindled and Grandpa drifted into a peaceful sleep, I whispered a quiet promise. I would honor his legacy, not with wealth, but with truth. And when the world looked again at the Carter name, they wouldn't see betrayal. They would see redemption.